In my last video, I shared with you that I had taken the oral glucose tolerance test and my blood glucose spiked a little higher than I thought it would. Not extreme, nothing bad, but it just made me very aware. So it brought to me the question is, if my blood glucose, what happened with my insulin? Because blood sugar tells you the outcome. Insulin tells you the F. Blood glucose spiked higher than I expected. That would usually mean that my insulin is involved. And I just want to know to what extent. Just for reference, a very simple explanation of insulin. Insulin is the hormone. Insulin is the hormone that helps move glucose out of the bloodstream and into the cells. And if your glucose rise, typically insulin is going to come in to try to save it. The key thing about this is why you want to make sure that your blood sugar is stabilized, because the more spikes that you have of blood glucose, the more times that insulin has to come in and try to calm things down. That's what leads to metabolic shifts and damage and can cause you long-term problems. Now, the funny thing about it is that you can still have normal blood glucose, but you can still have elevated insulin. So this is why it's important for you to make sure that you have the proper screenings and look at the whole picture, not just one piece of the puzzle, but the whole puzzle. You need to know what your fasting glucose is. You need to know your fasting insulin. You need to have your A1C. You need to have the oral glucose tolerance test results. And you look at those together to really be able to see what your body is trying to convey to you at this particular time. In my case, insulin was normal. It was not impacted by my blood glucose going up. It didn't show that in my test results. Now, that told me something very important, that the effects of my blood sugar was not coming from a constant chronic elevation of my insulin. This told me something very important. This spike was not coming from chronically elevated fasting insulin. Why does this matter after 40 or really at any age? The reason that this is important is because insulin resistance can develop in a very subtle way. Very subtle. It's not something that is aggressively seen outwardly immediately, which is why I personally believe more people don't pay closer attention to it. This is why it's important not to separate gut health from cardiometabolic health. Because if your gut is inflamed, dysregulated, or stressed, it can amplify a glucose response. You got to remember again, body systems do not operate separate. Even though we think so, they don't. One thing is going to impact the other. And this is why with my clients, I do not look at their labs in isolation. And also, I'm not looking to diagnose a person. I'm really looking for what is the root causes of these particular things that are going on in their body. Why are we seeing these test results? Because that's what you want to know. Because if you can get to the root cause, hopefully then you can resolve the problem, not just in that one area, but in all the other areas of the body. All the other systems of the body can greatly be rewarded if you can address what is going on in this one particular area and you can identify the root. Unfortunately, as a society, we have been groomed by traditional medicine to wait to numbers trend towards diagnostic numbers. And I think that is a big mistake. By the time your body shows external damage, you probably have had years worth of internal damage. When you're able to understand insulin and how it impacts the body, you become more able to understand patterns. And with patterns, the most important thing is to recognize them early and do something about it. If you or some may want more clarity around your particular patterns and your particular numbers, I will link the assessment below so you can take that free assessment. Make sure that you watch the previous video about the oral glucose tolerance test. That'll give you a little bit more information. I hope that you would, not only for yourself, but also encourage your family members to make sure you go get tested, that you know your number, and you would be proactive about your health.